Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, bonsoir, if you're listening from France, I'm not sure. Hi, I'm Jacob, I am the host of the LTW Fancast. Today I'm bringing you some content this week. It's not going to be a pod, I'm going to try video form, more of like a online YouTube discussion rather than a podcast. Because basically we've had 4 rounds of the PWR Cup. Obviously things haven't gone so well for Tigers. I don't think that needs too much introduction. But what I wanted to do in this video is give a bit of a breakdown of the stats beyond the scorelines, to kind of go through it all and to see any sort of patterns emerging, how a Tigers woman going to approach the game of rugby this year, and are there any clues as to how Tigers can look to gain footholds, or is it just a little bit negative? We'll find out in this video. Basically, this video is possible because superfan David Kennedy has compiled an amazing report on all the stats, and these are all the stats that are on the official PWR website as well. So this is where the stats have come from. But yeah, shout out to David Kennedy. Really, really fantastic report of all the stats from Tigers' first round against Bristol Bears all the way through to their last game against Saracens women away. So, what do the stats tell us? Now, I think the first stat that is quite stark is that in 4 rounds of fixtures, Tigers have only scored 4 tries, which is not good enough, particularly when we're conceding so much. But what are the other stats telling us? And before I go into this, I'm going to caveat this by saying I really enjoy the quote that was attributed to Benjamin Disraeli. It was never proven that it was him that said it. Was that there's lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics. And I think statistics can be sort of framed to make any sort of argument. But, we're going to go with that and see where it will take us. So, some of these stats do make for a little bit grim reading. So, the 22 entry success rate, so that is the rate at which Leicester Tigers women are entering the opposition's 22, is quite low. So, the mean average across all 4 matches is 8.3%. So, that probably gives you an indication as to why Tigers are struggling to score points. They're just not getting in the 22 enough. And that does need to be higher. But it does kind of seem that in that 4-week block, we are, we've got a small squad. Defence is improving slightly, particularly in the first half. So the first half, it was in the first game against Bristol, we just conceded 8 tries. Against Loughborough, it was 5. Against Sale, it was 4. Against Saracens, it was 4. So we're still conceding far too many tries in the first half. But you can see that quickly going down across that block. So, if that continues, that trajectory of going down, suddenly we might not be on the end of such high scoring points. Score margins, that was the word I was looking for. The percentage of line breaks per carry is another stat highlighted by David, is far too low. We're averaging 3% of line breaks per carry across all 4 games. But that's the mean average, but that again has been slowly increasing. So, we all know the context, we all know the background. Tigers have a new squad, not a lot of PWR experience at all. It's going to take some time, but over the 4-week blocks, we are seeing these stats slowly moving in the right direction. There's not a lot of stats actually. Tigers are getting worse at stuff. We are getting better, less worse, glass half full, glass half empty, depends on your interpretation. The very interesting thing that has appeared in these stats, and that's something that is that going to be Tigers' focus or not? I'm not sure, but I think it's something that I want to discuss. We're kicking more. We're kicking over the 4 games of the PWR Cup block, we, on average, give or take, we are kicking more. And I do wonder if that's going to be something that Tiger's going to fall back on in this season. Now, in our past 2 seasons in the PWR, we've not had a kicking game, really. It wasn't something that the coaches then decided to focus on. It's not obviously a big of a thing in women's rugby traditionally as in men's rugby, but I think as we've seen in this World Cup with Dana O'Brien with Ireland, a team can cause a lot of damage if you've got a really, really good kicking game. And, we've got Kristen Bitter coming in from USA, fly half / inside centre, extremely highly rated. She's not a long range kicker like Dana O'Brien from what I've seen of her, but all of her kicks tend to be very technical. They tend to be very high, which is very good for sort of like chasing wingers to compete. And, we've also got Amika Labouré, French scrum half, Tess Fury, international fullback. Obviously, we've got players as well, like Abby Priestnall's played at fly half. Sarah Nicholas can play at fly half. Ellie Turner's obviously come back from Lichfield. I think I have a suspicion, it's not really coming through the stats, it's just my hunch, that Fraser Gocher, Ross Bundy and the coaching squad at Tigers Women want to focus on kicking. And I think with a player like Bitter, who showed up even when USA, I know she came off the bench in games and stuff, but she showed up under pressure and with a pack under pressure. Tigers can use kicking not just as a reprieve, but I think also as a potential weapon. So that is something that I think has interested me from the stats, and it isn't just all doom and gloom. So I'll be interested to see how that goes on. The other thing that I think in terms of improvement is also line out. It's not been consistent enough across this PWR period. If our line out's better, we're giving the opposition less ball, and it also gives us an opportunity to gain more entries into the 22 if we've got a driving maul, if we've got players that can deliver 50-22s, etc. So that is definitely something that I think is also interesting, and I think line out consistency needs to be better, because again, it's something that hasn't always been great with Tigers Women across their seasons in the PWR. The final main thing is defence. Obviously, we've seen the score lines. That isn't the result of good defence. Over the entire cup run, we've only made 2 dominant tackles according to official PWR statistics. That doesn't need to increase. Now, again, the caveat is that you could be making lots of dominant tackles, but still concede lots of tries because you could absolutely whack the fly half, but they've passed the ball, and you've made. You've conceded a try from a break and stuff. So, our defence has to be smart as well as more physical, and it has to adapt to all kinds of attacks. Sale is our first game away in the PWR. They obviously got an all-court attack under former Tigers head coach Tom Hudson, so we need to be sort of smarter, staying really well connected, not necessarily more dominant, but if we can increase those dominant tackle fronts, again, you will see those score lines begin to get closer and closer. The other interesting thing, obviously, of course, about defence is, again, I'm going to talk about the fact that there hasn't really been nowhere near enough PWR Cup highlights or content in general. I will shout out Loughborough Lightning. I know they're the old enemy, Northampton Saints, whatever. They've been consistently putting highlights on their YouTube. So you can only take so much from a game from highlights in terms of defence, but I think it did show that there are disconnects in defence, which is very understandable. New team, learning combinations, are having to learn really, really quick. I think over this 4-week block, if we focus on defence and focus on maintaining connections, being able to read defensively as a system, again, those defence margins will become slightly better, as in less points conceded. But again, we are talking about something that Leicester Tigers Women traditionally never been strong on. Our defence in our 2 seasons of the PWR was never our strong talking point. So it's something that needs to be the focus of Fraser Gocher and Ross Bundy and the rest of the coaching teams. Because the other stat in terms of defence is is that on average, the 4 teams that we played against made 710 metres against us. And this is relevant because slightly different attacking styles of those 4 teams, but we'll be facing those 4 teams in our first 4 games of the PWR after October. And if you converse that as to how many metres we're making on average 208 metres. Our total metres made across the cup campaign is only 30 metres more than Bristol made against us in round 1. So we need to be conceding less metres. We also need to be making more. The team know this. They'll be working on this extremely, extremely hard. And I've got full faith in that they're doing this. But, we're not going to be conceding 50, 60 points if we're not conceding those running metres. So it's just about reducing the opportunities that we're giving to opposition. But I'm stating the obvious here, but these are the facts. So that is kind of an overview of the attack and defence and kicking that has been over the cup campaign. And I could be doing all this, and this could all turn out to be utter dross. Because can you read that much into the PWR Cup, particularly with teams changing so much because of World Cup teams across the league? I'm not sure. But it's, the thing for Tigers is what can they improve on? Because they have got better. The stat that first half we're conceding less tries. So that's got better quite quickly, So the stats are pointing mostly in the right direction. So it's just a case of what can they physically accomplish in this 4-week block that we're now in until the 25th of October when we're playing Sale. So I'm recording on Wednesday the 24th of September. So we're about 32 days away from the PWR Cup. The PWR, starting again. What can Tigers change? Obviously, we've got World Cup players coming in. But, how long will they have time to adjust, etc.? That's something I'm going to look into more in depth in the run-up to that opening game against Sale. But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting looking at those kicking stats. That is something that I think Tigers should lean into, as well as improving defence. We know from when I spoke to Fraser Gocher in the summer that they're wanting to be they're not wanting sort of the harem-scarum rugby that Tom Hudson wanted them to play last season. So, obviously they still wanted to play attacking rugby. We've only scored 4 tries, but one of those 4 tries was a very, 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 very good individual score from Grace Dean against Loughborough. I think she's a name to kind of keep an eye on. I think the final thing as well to kind of focus on is speed. Fraser Gocher talked a lot about particularly Caroline Kursakova from Lichfield being very, very quick, and how maybe that could be a weapon for Tigers in defence and on kicks. From the highlights from Loughborough, it looked like that Loughborough were getting on the outside of us fairly easily. But again, highlights will emphasise that over watching a full match replay. It takes time to adjust, and that's what these PWR Cup campaigns are for. It's to bring players up to speed. So again, I think it's making sure about speed and stamina, and overall general S&C is kind of really honed in over this 4-week period. Not overloading the players, making sure they're fresh and roaring and ready to go for that opener against Sale in the evening on Saturday 25th of October. Okay, so that's me about 40 minutes worth rambling about stats. Has this worked? Do you understand any of that? Let me know. This is something that I'm just trying to do. I don't know if it's worked. But yeah, very, very, very interesting. As I said at the beginning of the video, sometimes stats don't really tell us anything at all. Sometimes they can tell us stuff. So yeah, be interested to know your thoughts, really. The question is how quick can Tigers close the gap? And the stats don't tell us that, but it gives us an indication as to where they're going, and I think that is interesting. And yeah, we will see come 25th of October, what can Tigers can do this season. And again, I don't think the PWR Cup is too much of an indicator. I think it does indicate that we are slightly behind the rest of the league at the moment. But the thing about women's rugby is that things can change so massively. I'm still holding out hope that we're going to make a couple of post-World Cup signings, but we'll see. We'll see. Regardless, I have utmost faith in the team. They're working incredibly, incredibly hard. They've been working their socks off since end of May, beginning of June. There's so much passion and spirit in that side, built on Tigers fight, and I'm sure that they will begin to show that. And it's very, very exciting that we've got all matches watched under some form of live stream this season as well. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, that's going to be me ending ranting and rambling. If you've enjoyed this, let me know. If you didn't enjoy this, let me know. But next week, hopefully, fingers crossed, I should have a pod coming out. Something slightly different as well, which should be really, really exciting. So keep your eyes tuned for that. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and also the podcast email is ltwfancast@gmail.com. So catch you guys soon and enjoy.